Okay guys, so I've got a busy day today, and what I'm doing right now is I'm about to cut up this beef kidney fat, also called suet, and we are going to make some tallow, not for skincare today, but for the kitchen use. So I'm just gonna chop this up into small pieces, put it in a crock pot to let it simmer down and render the fat out of it, and then I'll jar it up and keep it next to the stove for our cooking. After that's done, we are gonna go out to the garden and I'm gonna show you all of my fall plants that have been planted because I am almost done with a 100% fall frost hardy garden. I have a video on rendering tallow, which I'll link down below if you guys are interested in learning how to do it. Tallow is a shelf-stable form of fat that you can use for anything cooking. I use it for my skincare. It's an excellent moisturizer. Although I do mix it with some, other oils like sesame or sunflower, and then some essential oils to give it a nice scent. But for my kitchen use, it's like lard, which is shelf stable, or ghee. Once the fat is rendered down, it can be kept and stored at room temperature. It makes a really good camping oil because you can just take your jar, keep it anywhere. You don't have to refrigerate it like you would butter. And although it does impart a slightly beefy flavor, I don't really find it to taste like beef ever. I use it in almost everything except for baking. Obviously, you're not going to want a more robust flavor in your baked goods. But it's really, really good for you. It's really natural because it's just a one ingredient fat. You can source your own beef kidney fat or suet, which is how you make tallow. I do source mine from the grass-fed and finished cow company that I buy my whole cow from. That's how we order our meat, is by the whole cow. So I just source my kidney fat from them whenever I need to restock up. And all it takes is just some chopping of the fat and then letting it simmer down and straining out the oil, and there you have it. There you have a jar of good, healthy cooking fat to work with until you gotta do it again. But you'll have to clean it up yourself. See all this connective tissue? I'm gonna have to get rid of this and just pull out the fat pieces. I mean, technically I could leave it in there because the process of rendering makes the liquid fat separate from all of the other stuff like connective tissue, meat, and then you strain that liquid fat out. I technically could render this down with it in, but it just makes it for a cleaner filtering process and less work later on when I'm trying to pick out the pieces of connective tissue and meat that haven't rendered down all the way. So I'm gonna finish chopping this up real quick, and then I'll show you what I do with the crock pot before we head out to the garden. Like I said before, I'll link my other tallow video down below. It's like absolutely in depth because I'm not gonna go into it right now. I work tonight, so I'm trying to get as much done as I can before I have to start getting ready for work. And I will see you in a second. So here I've got all the tallow I want to do today. I could put more in here. It's just going to require more stirring. So I have pretty much a 2-inch layer here on the bottom. And that's going to just create enough surface area for all of these to be warm at the same time. And like I said, I could have cut up more. I could do more in this crock pot, but it does require stirring because you do not want to be burning your oil. When you burn oil, it causes it to go rancid, to oxidize faster. You just want a slow simmer of this fat to render it out into the liquid fat part, which we will then strain out, and the connective tissue and everything that you're gonna strain out. I feed it to my dogs, they love it, or my chickens. So I'm gonna put this on high to get it started, just because when I use this crock pot on low, it takes forever to get started, and I don't want to be doing this for several hours. I have made a big, like probably twice as much in this crock pot before, and it took like 6 hours to render all of that tallow down, and it wasn't very hands-off because I had to come in and stir it all the time. So I'm doing less today. I can always do more later if I need it. And for now, I'm going to put it on high until it gets up to temp, and then I may drop it down to low. Although I'm not leaving the house in the next couple hours, so I might just leave it on high. I just need to get it done before I have to go into work. So I'm going to cover this, put it on high, and let's go out to the garden. So we are going out to the garden, guys, and I wanted to show you all of the new things that I have done in the past few days. First and foremost, you'll notice I took the shade cloth down. Both shade cloths, technically, because there were two separate ones. There was I think a 30-foot one or 35-foot one and a 15-foot one. Because I added onto the shade cloth structure this year another 15 to 20 feet, so I needed to buy a secondary shade cloth. And most of my in-ground garden has been planted. So I did make the decision to just cover this entire second half of the in-ground garden with a tarp for the entire winter. I have planted out most of my cold weather crops. Almost all of my seed starts are gone. So I'm actually not going to need the second half of that in-ground garden to plant anything with. And frankly, I am quite tired of pulling up Bermuda grass. So I'm just going to keep that covered for the entire winter. Hopefully bring down a lot of that Bermuda grass problem next year. And it's not really something I'm thinking about right this second because I don't have to. But at some point in the future, I will be thinking about how I'm going to amend these rows to try and keep more Bermuda grass out next spring. But for now, I've got tons of plants planted in these in-ground rows, and I am perfectly happy with the hopeful harvest I will have in a few months. Now, I did get a lot of my onions planted, and you'll see I have this cattle kennel laying over the top. And that's because the stray cat that was digging into my beds a couple weeks ago came back the day after I planted all these onions and decided to dig in my onion bed. Thankfully, it didn't ruin a whole bunch of my starts, but this has been an amazing way to keep the cat out. I'm sure he's not scared of it or anything, but it does deter him from digging in here because there's not many places to stand. And I have not covered this with mulch yet just because these onion starts are so tiny. They're like blades of grass, and I don't want them to get lost in the mulch. So I'm waiting. I'm having to water it like 2 times a day to keep this soil moist, but I'm waiting until they get a little bit bigger, and then I will mulch it. And hopefully the cat will stay out of it then. And unfortunately, the sticker that I labeled my garlic bed with did not stick around very long. Fortunately, I have the video to show me which bed is which, but my garlic bed here is doing okay. I've got, if you can see this guy right here, there's a little garlic start coming out of the ground, which is very hopeful to see, especially in this part of the bed, because this is where the cat dug through this whole area, and I had to put the soil back, reset the garlic cloves as best I could, and now I'm starting to see garlic coming out of the beds. So that is good. I've been continually watering these, not every day, but every other day. The mulch does help keep the moistness in, but it's still getting hot. Yesterday it was 91 degrees, which is actually 91 here in my garden now that I don't have my shade cloth. So I wasn't expecting this heat wave, but the older I get, the more I realize the Weather Channel has no idea what they're doing. And I probably could have left the shade cloth on a little bit longer, but I was assuming we weren't going to have any more days in the 90s for the rest of the month. I assumed wrong. Ooh, look at this guy. He's ready to come out of here. This is the biggest one of both of my garlic beds. And this is the Achillium Red Softneck Artichoke garlic bed. Here's my most recent bed of transplants, which is going to be the Inquisin cabbage and the Durgesh 41 cauliflower, which are doing fine. So are my peas that I transplanted out here with you guys. They're growing slowly. But it is pretty warm for them during the day. But look at that guy. He's the tallest one I've got yet. Transplanting so late in the fall season does have its disappointments. When you plant earlier, there's more sunlight hours during the day. Obviously, as the winter gets more into winter, we have less daylight hours. And also with the nights getting colder, the plants are just going to grow more slowly because it's cold. It's pretty cold. It's down here to the 50s. Like we got to 51 degrees last night, which is pretty cold for our area. But it just slows down plant growth a lot. Unfortunately, I have to plant so late in the season because I live in the high desert. So I'm still having really, really hot days during what everyone else's fall cooler temperatures would be. And then I kind of gave it a 1-2 punch by taking the shade cloth off, and now 90 degrees ambient temperature is actually 90 degrees under this shade structure, which no longer has protection over it. So these starts that I planted out later than everything else are growing a bit more slowly than the ones I planted out at the beginning. And then also on top of that, the secondary transplants that I planted out, like this bed I just showed you guys, these are all really cold tolerant brassicas. The Inquisian cabbage does well overwintering, and so does the Durgesh 41 cauliflower. So they actually prefer colder weather, which is great for my cool nights. Not so great for my 90-degree days I had. But everything's doing great. I haven't gotten any peas yet, but they look fantastic. Look at these beauties. They're getting so big. And this is a radish I was eating earlier. I harvested my first radish today, guys. First radish. There's another little one. I'm gonna leave this guy in. Because why not? I pulled the first one out because I saw it was getting chewed up. See if I can show you guys this. Here on top, this sort of munching he has. I didn't like kill all of my roly-polies. They still exist. Plus there are other bugs that also like radishes. It's food sitting in the ground. So I wanted to pull this guy up before some creepy crawly made like huge holes in him. I've also had great germination on the seeds that we planted together here in this root crop vegetable bed. I'm not really remembering what I planted specifically on this left side. It looks like radishes. We'll find out as they get bigger. I'm having a little bit of germination on this side. Not too much. But I do have enough germination that I need to remove the cardboard that was sitting here so that these little guys get light. And I am having some formation of radishes here on these guys. There he is. Looks elongated. So these radishes right here were the mix of both the wasabi radishes that I told you about the other day and then the landrace varieties from goingtoseed.org. So I'm not really sure what's going to come up. I'm sure this red elongated one I just showed you guys is one of the landrace varieties because the wasabi ones are green. And I don't see any green radishes coming up just yet. But I do know the wasabi ones take longer. I believe it was 60 days, which is pretty long for a radish because usually radishes in ideal conditions will come to maturity in about 30 days. Like the red one that I was showing you guys. And I do have a couple holdouts from the summer garden that I'm still harvesting off of. This is the Bikino pepper, and I need to come through here probably today and do another harvest of these guys. This is their unripe version, green, and then their ripe version is orange. And I've just been dehydrating these guys and powdering them to make some sort of chicken or fish powder. But my absolute last holdout is this pepper bed. This pepper bed has the Jalafuego peppers in it and several, I want to say there's 5 Sugar Rush peach pepper plants. I have a Thai pepper plant right here, and then right next to it a red or green chili. I never found out which one because I just harvest them all at red. And then over there I have a banana pepper. And I also have one California Reaper pepper. I'm not certain that this guy will turn like color-wise to what he's supposed to. It's just not quite warm enough at night for peppers to thrive, and it took him all year to produce this one fruit. But we're gonna give it a go because this is the one pepper that Chase really, really wanted me to grow this year. And although I didn't fail miserably, the plant failed. It wasn't me. Here in my 10-foot bed, I have 3 rows of amazing cauliflower and 2 rows of early Jersey Wakefield cabbage. And they're coming along. Early Jersey Wakefield is a rather quick maturing cabbage. You can see them already starting to begin their little heads that they will form, and it's a conical shaped cabbage with very loose leaves. So these should be some of the first harvests from my winter garden. But I'm sure we still have probably about a month left out on these guys. And here in my in-ground garden, I want to show you guys something pretty cool. So this guy looks a hell of a lot like cabbage. He is a brassica that I had planted in here last year. And I had cut him down all the way to the stem, leaving the roots in the ground like I usually do. Now, when fall started, maybe back in August or September, I had seen a plant with brassica-like leaves starting to grow up from just roots that had been in the ground. I was like, I wonder what that's going to turn out to be. I thought it was going to be kale. But I see this plant now that the nights have cooled off and it's getting to be winter. And it's making a cabbage cone right in the center of it. I have never experienced this before. I don't know what happens. I don't know if it's actually going to make a cabbage head or if it's going to go straight to seed, because this is technically its second year. But I did cut it all the way down to the roots. So I have no idea what's going to happen, but we're going to monitor its progress. And it's got the cutest little cone that it's making right now. It has to be an early Jersey Wakefield because it's the only cabbage that I grew last year. Look at this tiny little cone. I mean, it's kind of solid. And it's growing faster than all of my other cabbages are, of course, because it's been in the ground a lot longer. I don't know how it's going to turn out, if it's going to go to seed or if I'm actually going to get the first cabbage head out of this comeback. It's definitely a cool experiment. I'm excited to see if I actually get a harvestable cabbage off of this second year plant. Because that could be a game changer. If I leave enough root for, me to keep these plants technically over summered in the garden, and then they just pop up whenever conditions are right for them and produce me another head next year, I highly doubt that's feasible. I've never heard of it. Surely if that was like some sort of reoccurring condition that people would just never start cabbages from seeds and do that every year. But we'll have to see because it's an absolute game changer if that's what happens. And I'll need to figure out what happened last year to make that happen. I know I didn't start that guy from seed because I saw leaves sprouting from a root stump this early fall. And I was like, that's got to be some sort of leafy green vegetable because any cabbage that I got last year I've already harvested, so it's not just going to grow back and create another head. But here we are with a cabbage creating another head, and I'm very excited. But most likely in a couple weeks it'll start to form a flower stalk and all my excitement will be ruined. We'll see. Who knows? This could be very cool. Well, I'm going to head inside and finish up my tallow. Do some more chores around the house. Thank you guys for joining me on this little impromptu fall garden walk. I'm so excited to have radishes coming out of the ground already. It's been kind of hard with all of my tomatoes and my beans and most of my peppers gone. It's hard to come out and get a harvest that I can actually eat from. At this point, I'm mostly just harvesting peppers as they mature and preserving them by either freezing or drying for the winter. So there's not a whole lot of, let me go out to the garden and see what I'm going to make for dinner tonight. That will come later once my broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage starts coming in. And rutabaga. But for now, I'm excited to have peppers and radishes. Catch you guys on the next one.